Welcome everybody to the first video on the Everything EOS channel since becoming the ENF's official YouTube channel. I'm here with two people that need no introduction. Yves, the chief of the EOS Network Foundation, Dan Larimer, the architect of EOS.io, the CEO and founder of Clarianos. There's so much we want to talk about. Dan's been publishing a couple of blogs. We got the working groups on the ENF side about to publish their blue papers. We'll give you some insight into that. I just want to take this opportunity to clear up some of the misunderstandings I've been seeing throughout the Telegram and Discord channels. And I think this format's the perfect opportunity to do so, to allow both the ENF and Clarianos to speak on how they envision EOS moving forward and EOS.io. So first question, what is the relationship between the ENF and what Dan's working on with Clarianos and Eden 2.0 and Mandel?
Well, I think so. I think at this point, it's somewhat obvious that we're both supporting each other, or we're working together to a certain extent, and we're essentially supporting the ecosystem. Now, the stakeholders for both parties they do have overlap, but they're also different. So the ENF works for the token holders. The ENF represents all of the token holders. Dan happens to be one of those token holders. Dan happens to be one of those stakeholders, and he's working on his ideas and on his application and what he wants to work on. Basically, both are happening at the same time. But we see with the ENF that we're working on chain-wide or chain-wide initiatives, whereas Dan is working on his initiative. There are overlaps between what he's working on and what we're working on, and essentially we're in a new process. We're in a new era on EOS where you can have multiple teams working on improving and on working on initiatives, improving EOS, and even greater than that, EOS.io, which affects all of the EOS.io iterations. It's the first time that we're in that position. Prior to this, everything was being filtered through Block.One. We now have, essentially, Dan and I were talking, and the opportunity in a way to fund multiple startups at the same time, and having them all work on different competing ideas, either overarching or competing ideas, and seeing which ones will ultimately win and which one will bring everybody else up. Prior to this, prior to the ENF or even Dan being back into the community, everything was being filtered through Block.One, and that applied to not just EOS, but all other EOS.io iterations as well. So we're in a way in a new era that we have not been before, and there will be stepping on toes, and there will be some tensions because we've never been here before. We're figuring out that process of what that is going to look like in real time. And so the ENF and Dan working together, working concurrently on certain things, separately on other things, sharing vision on some things, maybe competing on vision on other things, but we're doing it live. You're seeing it as it's happening.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary. I think it would probably be helpful to understand what it is I'm all about, why I'm on the EOS platform for building on my applications. I've long had the mission of creating free market solutions for securing life, liberty, property, and justice for all. You've probably heard me say that a million times over the past decade, and that's still what I'm up to. And I wrote my book, More Equal Animals, where I really dive in deep to the hard problems with decentralized governance. And how can you reach a consensus among a large group of people in a way that doesn't result in, de facto dictatorship, centralization around the incumbents in whatever organization, right? Whether it's the incumbent mining pool operators or the incumbent exchanges or the incumbent API nodes, right? There's an article I read recently on the structure of the Ethereum network, and how almost all API queries are going through 2 or 3 companies. And NFTs are disappearing from people's wallets because one of the companies providing API services blacklisted it. It's still on the blockchain, but you can't see it. And that type of centralization, solving those governance problems, solving the coordination problem, how do you get thousands of people to contribute to public goods, to recognize everyone's contributions, and to do so in a way that supports viral growth of community. So that's a really big vision. A lot of it has to do with social engineering kind of things, game theory and the like. And so that's sort of the area I'm specializing in. And it's an area that's not immediately relevant to a lot of other things, but it can help the EOS network. For starters, building on the EOS network, using EOS network to create community-specific tokens and provide liquidity to community-specific tokens. I want to have a user experience for my platform built on top of EOS that is seamless and people enjoy, and yet it's still decentralized. So I'm working with the ENF and Yves to identify the rough points on the EOS network that are preventing me from delivering that seamless user experience. And my belief is that it's also preventing a lot of other applications from delivering the same seamless experience. So there's alignment to make sure that the core protocol, both the Node EOS software that's actually running the network and the system contract, which is the smart contract driven operating system layer, if you will, on top of the EOS network that controls things like resource allocation and account names and things like that. So I'm really looking to improve the system level infrastructure. One of the things my team here at Clarion has is most of the core developers who built EOS.io on the team. And one of the things we are doing is creating Mandel. Mandel is the future of EOS.io, and it's being funded by EOS Network Foundation, and we're building and releasing that for the community. So my company has kind of like a dual roles. We do contracting to deliver specific feature requests provided by the ENF and broader community that are funded, and we're doing our own business where we're trying to create a viral online social platform that people can participate in. So there's a lot of overlap, a lot of synergy, but clearly two different objectives. And so that's why we're working together.
So Dan, why don't you work on what I want you to work on? Because I think that question is brought up to you almost daily. Hey, Dan, why aren't you working on EVM? Why aren't you working on the things that I believe as a token holder are important to the ecosystem?
Yeah, so everyone thinks that things have to be done single-threaded,
well, because that's what we've had, right? That's all we've had essentially.
And by single thread, I mean there's only one thing. The whole community can only work on one thing at a time, and there's debate over should it be EVM, should it be account names, should it be token symbols, should it be DeFi, should it be whatever the hot topic of the day is. And then be like, well, if you just did this one thing, that would solve everything. The correct answer is we need all these things done at maximum velocity possible. And that the person best suited for doing some of these things is the person most passionate about whatever it is that's being done. I happen to be passionate about decentralized governance and incentive models and solving that hard problem. That's a very hard problem that no other blockchain has solved. And if we solve it and make it viral, I think it can have huge impacts on the network.
We're feeling the growing pains right now, right? I'm not sure if people realize that the growing pains of the current process of now being able to essentially govern and or create processes for the chain itself right now alongside other EOS.io iterations are feeling the exact growing pains that you're likely wanting to work on, right? That what you're trying to do may come and help what we're currently feeling right now. It doesn't take away from that. It may propose ideas that may come and help that, while also having other groups also proposing ideas on how to resolve these growing pains.
There's other things to note too, like there's 6 different working groups all working in parallel here, talking single-threaded versus multi-threading. There's a wide EOS universe of development going on, and all very
for the first time
in a
very long time, if not forever.
so I saw that Dan posted one of his blogs. He posted 2 last week, and there's all this feedback coming out immediately. And there were people, why aren't you working on EVM? Everybody, EVM's being worked on right now. EOS Argentina, they're contracted to build it. It'll be released sometime before summer, most likely. Like, this is all still happening. What Dan does is what Dan's doing. Dan is not EOS. There is a lot of other work being done in parallel with Dan. And some of it may compete with each other, some of it might not, but the conversation's happening now. Nobody liked when Block.One would work in a silo and it would just be quiet and the community didn't know what was going on. For the first time ever, this opportunity of innovating out in the open, sharing ideas, taking the feedback, learning from that feedback and growing from that feedback. This is the first time it's ever happened before.
It's happening in real time. It's happening right now. That is the process. There are going to be growing pains because we've never been here. So what we need to figure out is, how do we have multiple teams working on multiple things at the same time, competing for attention, competing for essentially being able to either merge their proposals into the core code and or competing for resources. And yeah, some people have more gravitas than others. Dan, when you write something, people read, people listen. Surprise! Why is that a surprise to people? Yes, and the working groups are being given a platform to be able to do the same. Dan doesn't need the platform. He is the platform to be able to do that. And so we've got all these things working concurrently that will be competing for attention, for resources. Ultimately, it is messier, it is much harder to do this in parallel because there will be tensions. There will be people stepping on each other's toes. There will be people working on similar things, proposing competing ideas. The alternative is just waiting for somebody else to pick up the slack and only one entity doing everything. We've been there with Block.One. It does not work. It operates too slowly. We could go on why does that doesn't work, but it's much simpler. It's much more efficient. There's no tensions. Basically, you just wait around. We are in the process real time right now. And so it is messy. It is difficult. This is what we choose to do, though, in order to be able to accelerate the innovation so that multiple people can try and attempt to solve concerns or to try and innovate and try to move us forward more rapidly than what we were in before. But yes, with that speed, also we kind of lose efficiency in our way. We create tensions between different people's different teams.
One of the challenges decentralized protocols have is they tend towards stasis. No one can agree, so nothing can change. And you see this with a lot of early internet protocols, IRC, email. These systems have not really been able to evolve because they were very decentralized, and it becomes impossible to coordinate upgrades.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin is an example, yes. And the longer a decentralized system is operational, the harder it is to change. What we see is that new businesses start up completely centralized and take these old protocols and revive them, and people adopt them because it seems that people would prefer to have rapid innovation and new features rather than stasis. You need organizations willing to take the risk of removing the floppy drive, right? Deprecating the CD, all the things that Apple gets flack for removing too soon or forcing people into the future or removing ports that people use. Some of those things are necessary to make forward progress. And if we keep holding on to the past or allow the need to have universal agreement, everyone has to agree and we can't upset anybody, then the result is going to be stagnation, which puts people like Yves with the EOS Network Foundation and myself in a precarious situation because we want to advance the protocol. And in doing so, some toes will be stepped on. And the alternative is to not do anything, but that steps on other toes, right? If we don't do anything, then other chains eat our lunch. People leave for new chains that will implement the things that are needed and take those bold steps. So we have to walk this fine line between taking risks, not necessarily trying to appease everyone, not trying to design everything by committee, because that's the other thing, is the more people you involve in the discussion, the longer it takes to reach consensus. And this is one of the things I've been looking at when I've been studying community governance. If you have a dictator, you can reach consensus very quickly. You can go left, go right, make decisions. You have two people, all right, well, now you got to get them on a call. They have to talk things out. Maybe you can reach consensus in an hour. As you go to 10 people, to 20 people, to 100 people, the amount of time it takes to reach consensus and move forward securely increases exponentially. So that is the challenge, is finding the balance between moving forward and not being subject to a dictator. And I think
that's one of the challenges of the ENF, really. Dan will be presenting ideas. Dan will be presenting proposals for code changes. The network may decide to adopt or not adopt some of the things that, Dan, you present, because there are other competing ideas that will be competing with what you're presenting. What will you do if the network doesn't adopt your ideas? Or what happens if the network does choose to, that the best decision, or that the outcome that the network is looking for through the ENF, through the block producers, ultimately, they're the ones who decide, they decide to adopt your code. So can you talk a little bit about both scenarios? One is you propose something because you need it for your application, you think it's worthwhile, you present it as I believe this is value add, but it doesn't get merged in or approved. And the other one where, great, it does get approved. Can you talk a little bit about both? Because right now I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of anything that Dan says automatically is getting pushed in the code and is now the Dan show.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm trying to eat my own dog food, in the sense that I'm building a business, and my business it's a for-profit business. I'm not offering charity. I'm trying to build a successful killer application for the market that solves real-world problems and uses the EOS network as the best tool for doing the job. If the EOS network is no longer the best tool because it's stagnating or it's not doing the upgrades, then I have to consider what's best for the business to accomplish the ultimate business goals. And I'm not the only business that's having to make these choices, right? So if EOS is unable to move in a direction that allows for easier user sign-up, that allows for easier token management, that allows for easier name allocation, that all these subtle things that make huge differences on the final user experience. If EOS can't do that and some other EOS.io derivative can, then you're going to see people moving to Wax, moving to Telos, moving to whole new chains in order to adopt the vision. So the way I see things needing to evolve is we need to have lots of ideas funded simultaneously and see where people follow. Do people adopt ideas? Oh yeah, that's popular. Great. As a VC firm, you don't try to pick, well, which of these 100 startups is going to be a success and invest in just that one. You invest in them all and you see which one gets product market fit, right? It's entirely possible that my new designs are more clunky or hard to use or some way that I haven't considered, or that they don't play well with other people's designs, and other people might have better ideas than me. If there's another community standard that's getting traction that works, I'm happy to adopt it. I don't want to have to reinvent everything. That's not a good use of time. But I also can't wait around for 2 years for a community of people to reach consensus to deploy something. That's just not sustainable for business growth.
I think it's also important to go back to what you said about how the bigger the committee, the longer the decision-making takes. And I think we need to kind of create a separation of what you're suggesting for system contract upgrades and what you're suggesting for protocol level upgrades, because I've seen a lot of feedback coming from your recent posts, and some of the criticism was coming from other EOS.io iterations who maybe felt like some of these concepts are being forced on everyone, but really a lot of what you've been presenting recently would be EOS specifically, and it's kind of separate from what you're proposing in Mandel, whereas what you proposed in Mandel, most of the other EOS IO chains are pretty on board, it seems like, initially to implementing that, but the token registry and the name auction changes you suggested recently, there's been feedback, but I don't think everyone quite understands that some of this, like Mandel is protocol level, that would benefit all EOS IO chains, but then there's other things like what you've suggested recently, and those are more system contract changes, and the other chains don't have to adopt it. That's like the flavor of the chain. So the committee is essentially a lot smaller for some of your suggestions than others, and I think it's important to note that.
Yeah, so let's identify the difference here. Protocol level changes require all full nodes to upgrade. Every exchange needs to upgrade. Every API node needs to upgrade. That's major. It's like trying to hard fork Bitcoin. And we want to minimize those, and we want to keep those changes as small as possible. System contract level changes, they're just a smart contract that has a couple extra privileges, and not some of these don't even have extra privileges other than being managed by the block producers. So those contracts can be upgraded without any nodes having to change a thing. It's just the block producers sign a multi-sig, and now there's new features on the network. And a lot of the things I'm proposing are just new features. They don't really break anything that's already existing. They just create new possibilities. So there's, if we get to the point where we don't even want to allow the potential for there to be new possibilities because, well, maybe those aren't the right new possibilities. That's sort of like freezing because it's not good enough, so it can't go anywhere. I think Jordan Peterson said it best. You have to set your sights on, a North Star and go in that direction. And if you have to start moving, because if you're sitting still, you're not making any progress. And you might realize that a year down the road, you're slightly off the mark, but now you have more information and you can readjust and move closer to the mark. But if you're sitting still and you're just trying to debate which way is the right way to go, you're never going to get anywhere. So we have to be willing to take the best step forward that we can take today, given the information we have, knowing that we can pivot these things in the future if necessary. I think there's a real fear that, it's so hard to change anything. If we adopt something new now, we might never change it. We might never fix it. But I think that's just has to do with solving the governance problem, identifying risk, taking appetite, and realizing that just because some people might have other ideas of what we could prioritize or could be doing, those things aren't going to magically get done just because I'm not doing this thing that you don't want me doing, or you don't want ENF doing. It's not like we stop working on what we want to do and all of a sudden we're going to work on what you want us to do. That's a mindset that I think a lot of people have. If you're doing that, that means you're not working on what I want. And I think that's a false equivalence, right? People are going to complain, I guess, until you're doing exactly what they want you to do. But that's the recipe for being unhappy if you're always complaining that other people aren't doing what you want them to do.
Can we talk a little bit about the feedback process? Because one of the things really that I see there's a lot of frustration in the community, and I get frustrated about this as well by reading kind of the back and forth that's occurring, is how can we gather feedback on an idea if we don't present the idea? And then if we don't present the idea, then there's nothing to talk about, and people complain because there's nothing to talk about. But if we do present an idea, then people complain that it's not the idea that they want to talk about. And they feel like, it's the ideas, especially if you write it, that because you wrote it, it's already done deal. Can we talk about a little about that feedback process and how essentially we're doing it live, and how that is likely going to be one of the bigger challenges that we have in this new model of having multiple teams compete for attention, compete for resources, working on different things all at the same time. The bigger challenge is going to be how do we that feedback loop process, and when do we start that feedback process? So I know for us with the ENF, with the working groups, we're going to be publishing blue papers. Two of them are being sent to translation either today or tomorrow. they're in line to be released the week of the 24th. Now, that's the format that we chose to then, so within those working groups, there are people. Those people were chosen. So they're privileged. Yes, those people were privileged to work on something. Those people, though, went out and did feedback in their own methods. Then the public grandiose feedback process will occur when those blue papers are essentially released. That's when the let's say the complete public feedback portion of things happen. In your case, you've been talking about a white paper, for example, but you've been releasing articles here and there, gathering feedback while that's happening. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's, I think, where a challenge is going to be, is how do we improve the process of gathering feedback? Because we've never been in that position before. We've never had this before.
The way I gather feedback is, first I talk to my team. And that's where I bounce ideas back and forth. It's a closed circle. There's lots of freedom to express crazy ideas that then can get shot down without them worrying about backlash or judgment, because they know that this is just how innovation occurs. You have to be willing to present crazy half-baked ideas and see where it goes. I start with my small team. If I start to get some traction or consensus with my team, I reach out to a couple other community members just to see what they think. And then I write a blog post. Writing the blog post is usually me thinking through the idea for myself and trying to articulate it for almost the very first time. After I release the blog post, I go and I follow every Twitter comment. I go to the Telegram chats and I read what everyone has to say there. I look at the comment sections on the post, and then I engage with the community. And sometimes, even before blog posts, I throw random ideas out in Telegram or on Twitter just to see what people think about some idea, even out of the context of the bigger picture of what I'm doing. But either way, I take all this feedback in, and then sometimes I have a follow-up blog post that says, all right, this is what I've learned. Here's an enhancement. I can give an example of how I've listened to the community. I came up with the token symbol name auction process based on the name auction. It seemed like a lot of people were really, really frustrated with how the name auction works. It can take too long. It's not predictable, so on and so forth. And I'm sympathetic to that. I recognize there's problems with that. And so I've got these other problems that people also complain about: name squatting and the like. And I'm trying to solve the two things together to create the best overall experience. So I took all that feedback in and I came up with a new proposal. This new proposal is, eliminates the auction altogether, and it implements a Bitcoin style proof of work price adjustment, where every so often the price changes based upon how frequently people are registering names. This means if you want a name, you can just go out there and buy the name. Lots of names can be cheap. You can get them right now, and high quality names, shorter names, whatnot, might be slightly more expensive, but the process is simple, and we're still fighting the name squatters and so forth. That type of design evolution is based on community feedback about some of the shortcomings of the current premium name auction system. And so I can see a lot of these things. And what's I find to be the biggest challenge is any proposal I put out there, there's all this background context that I have that most readers don't have. They're looking at it through a narrow straw. And I've got my own narrow perspective that I need to factor in as well. But I'm trying to balance a whole lot of factors. I have to balance security considerations. I have to balance technical implementation approaches. Some people would suggest things like, hey, let's increase the size of EOS account names at the protocol level, at a hard forking level. It goes throughout all the code. That's such a huge undertaking that it never actually happen. It'd be like trying to swap out all of EOS for Cardano or something. It's that big of a fundamental change. But I can hear the need for longer, prettier account names in general, and I can propose a system contract level, something that can be deployed without having to hard fork everyone, something that's backwards compatible with what's out there. That those are the types of things that are factored into some of the proposals. They might not be ideal in some kind of purist sense, but they are reachable from where we are in a cost-efficient, developer-efficient, low-risk approach. And I'm trying to balance all of those things. So it's not just a matter of, what feature would we like today? Oh, we'd like EVM, or we'd like Bitcoin script, or we'd like new intrinsics. There's all kinds of things people would like, but sometimes we have to balance the implementation challenges, the migration challenges, the long-term support challenges of various approaches. And so that means I need to take the feedback and I need to provide that extra context. Sometimes people get it, sometimes people don't, but we still need to move forward.